Welcome to Speak Sex. I'm your host, Eurydice. I am your sex whisperer here in the internet. And I'm coming to you from my quarantine in Miami Beach. And my guest today comes to us from her quarantine in New Jersey. So we're both in hotspots right now.
Absolutely.
And she is Dr. Holly Richmond. She is a licensed psychotherapist as well as a licensed sex therapist and somatic psychotherapist. And she's someone I've been wanting to bring on the show for at least a year. And we've been trying to do it in person, delaying it. And here we are, the global stasis has told us, among many other messages that I'd like to touch on, that it's okay to go viral and, get this communication rolling now and not wait any longer, because the time has come. My feeling, Holly, is that the time has come for like a bigger change in like global consciousness, So I'm hoping that there will be, that this kind of like forced freeze frame will help people, look inward and kind of like re-examine our values, our priorities, the speed of our lifestyle, or like go, chase, compete, catching up, fear of missing out, all of that, yeah. And, give us time, like it's given us a lot of wealth in time, which is a currency, in the marketplace, because we were normally paid for our time. So we always thought of time as something that we understand in terms of money, income earned, right? And now, like time, I feel, is back to just being time that you can't count or you like go crazy. So you have to like stop, counting time and instead like making time for all of the more feminine, practices and habits that we just kind of like forgot or didn't do because we never get paid for them, because it's free. it's service, it's considered like a duty for like women and some more evolved men. So, I just feel that hopefully at the end of it, we will reconnect with nature more than like, each other's approval. We will reconnect with like the feeling of being approved by Mother Nature in that space and, reappreciate alone space and, reappreciate each other, reconsider our language, our vocabulary, and even, our intimate lives, love lives, and sex lives, right? Because something that I hear a lot, from people is that like the first person I actually like feel anything for after this is over, I'm gonna marry. We came from a place where like everybody was like, no, I'm done with marriage. I'm done, everybody has scars, I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be used. I don't want to be lied to. I don't want to have to pay for a divorce. I don't want to deal with alimony or whatever, for a million different reasons, people have been like this, enchanted, right? And then we've had like the dating apps, which have been, like such a finding, such an amazing treasure trove, for like meeting, getting together with strangers for romance or friendship and romance. So, it's felt like a cornucopia in that way for daters. And here we are now, and everybody's like, wow, it would be so different if like I had someone at home.
Right. Just, those of us that are with our partners 24/7 want some private space, and those of us who are alone 24/7 want some
partner space.
Partner space and in real life connection. Yeah. So it's, we're all managing. And I think for those of us who are home with our partners, learning the art of negotiation and confrontation is something we really are being forced into. We can't have an argument and then go our separate ways, right? We have to have that argument and then we have to live in the house with this person.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Go ahead. Would you elaborate? Yeah.
So it's just sitting in the discomfort with the person who's in your same house and under your nose all day, that doesn't feel comfortable. So I think I'm hearing and I'm seeing even in myself, you're having to resolve the conflict sooner because the other side, the flip side of that is just untenable. You know, being in the same house in presence of someone that you're just not connected to. It doesn't feel good anymore when there's so much chaos on the outside.
Right, you can't just get out of the house.
You can go for a walk.
Yeah,
how long can you really walk for?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, because, part of the concept for the podcast is, speaking sex is not just about sex. It's about every type of relationship. So it's exactly that, kind of finding confidence and trust. Right. To be able to say the truth and expect to be heard, and take your time, because it takes time to listen and to speak. Because when we're in a hurry, I feel that we speak in cliches, we repeat what we hear in movies or maybe what we've heard from our parents, all the generational, stereotypes. So it requires time to actually figure out what our own needs are and then say them and not fear that we're going to get abandoned because we said them and reassure the other that it's not personal, And
for sure.
Yeah.
So I think, speaking of cliches, one of the little quotes I love, but it's trite. It's, don't believe everything you think. And that's, kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, I agree.
What we get culturally, what we get from our parents, those are all important messages. But I think to me, the real definition of self-awareness is knowing what's right for us in the present moment. And sometimes that's not what we have been taught. So for women in particular, we're taught to be nice over being taught to be right. So
yes.
It's more important to be nice than it is to be correct.
Or honest, be nice, be silent and nice. That's what we're taught. Yeah. Instead of speaking your truth, it's better to just, kind of, put yourself aside, ignore your own feelings and make peace for everybody. Right? Yeah. Which may have worked when there were no other options. So it was that or not survival. But now it creates conflict.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We want to be heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And we just can't swallow it anymore. That's a metaphor I use a lot with my clients. So many of the women I talk to who are survivors of sexual trauma or just women in general who are having trouble in their sexual relational lives, that also comes with a connection to eating disorders or, body dysmorphic disorder. So they've got poor body image or they've got some kind of disordered eating, because I feel like we have to metaphorically swallow so much of what society tells us and not just be ourselves.
Wow, interesting. Yeah.
Sex and eating disorders go hand in hand. It's a marriage made not in heaven whatsoever. But they go together. They find each other.
Yeah. It's almost because I like to think, and I don't want to encourage a split because, we've been split for thousands of years, into body and mind and, the body is the woman and the mind is the male, right? The patriarchy. Right. But in a way, if we agree that we both have masculine and feminine sides, both men and women, I feel that the female in the woman, it's the masculine mind, which is the masculine prevalent conversation, the masculine logos, what we hear all the time, what we're picking up, is a slave driver to who we actually are, which turns out to be the body, because our mind has been trained by the patriarchy, which is, a system based on male tropes.
Dominance.
Yes, dominance, yes. So that's how we end up, like punishing our body, right? For whatever, for not fitting in, for not, doing for getting us the reward we want. Yeah, and creating so much distance within ourselves.
Right.
By doing that, you like get far away from your own body, and it becomes like an it instead of you.
Right, for sure. And I just think right now, because we all are forced to stay home, I'm hoping that distance is shrinking. So there's less space between who we are and who we think we're supposed to be, right? So the mind and the body, because I agree with you, they're actually not separate. Even sex and self aren't dualistic. We are sex, right? We don't have sex. Sex is a piece of us. So I'm hoping all of those things, how we eat, how we have sex, how we feel, how we breathe, how we do, become more central as we're forced to be in presence with ourselves.
Yeah. That's the only way to find something positive in this complete, attack on our way of life is to just say, okay, it's like a fix. It's a quick fix, Like maybe, let's say it's an update, like our software was not so good. And now, when you update your phone or your laptop, for a while it doesn't work and you gotta wait for the update. And I think that hopefully that's the most positive way I can see this. It's like we're sitting still while our functionality is being updated to a better, more humane, more conscious, more inclusive, and more environmentally conscious too version.
Right.
Yeah, new version.
COVID is definitely the equal opportunity offender, right? So I think for the first time in a long time, we really feel like we're all in this together. And some harder hit than others, but there's no demographic left out. It's so challenging, and it's presenting challenges for people on different levels. I'm hoping it's giving us the time and space to come back to ourselves a little bit and stop being and start being.
Yes. And so sexually, since that's what we're focusing on mostly, even though it's all sex, all of life, in a sense, birth and growth and mating and dating, it's all sex. But what do you think, my first question has to be, inevitably, what do you think about the explosion of porn use? And, first we heard about Pornhub, being free in Italy and then, France and Spain, and now we're getting these numbers. So what's your take on that? And is there something to be done? Because my worry is that at the end of this, there'll be a hell of a lot of porn addiction.
People are certainly turning to it more. But I'm hoping it's a healthy balance. Honestly, from my clients, they're saying, yes, my masturbation level is up a little bit, but there's nothing that's feeling out of control about it, because it's living with them. They're at home. Like most people with porn. People who have trouble with porn is less than 5%. So, this whole porn addiction model, I honestly, I'm not a huge proponent of it. I treat compulsivity all the time, but, technically there's no such thing as porn addiction. So I'm always careful with that language, and how we treat people. Words inform our experience. If I call you,
for sure. Yes. That's wonderful. Well, that's positive. I'm glad to hear that, because I feel I always we all agree. I think that there is no one in our line of service who doesn't make the point porn is not real sex, and remember, and hopefully when you enjoy it, you remember that
that you are not education either.
Right. It's like movies are not real life. If you like action movies, you don't expect to then live your life like that or go home and replicate them. And so it's the same with porn. You're watching it specifically because it's something that you are not going to do at home. So that's what makes it, let's say, entertainment. Yeah. It's made up.
Totally. It's escapism. And I mean, I was just looking at the numbers today of how much Netflix use is up. I mean, our bandwidth is up. So I think if at any time people have needed elements of escapism, it's now. And I think porn is a piece of that. And it will be interesting. You're right to see, 6 months to a year after this, if there has really been a detriment to human sexuality because people are online more watching porn. But I couldn't agree with you more. Like, if we get the message out there that it's entertainment, there's nothing educational about it, it's purely for pleasure and entertainment, then, I don't think there's a problem with it. It's when people try to replicate it or think their partner should replicate it that you get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Okay, so, and what do you think about the virtual rooms? There are now virtual sex rooms and like virtual orgies. I don't know that I will give the address, but, the online address, but, there are, naked, meetings, online meetings. So you get up with a group of strangers or Facebook friends, and I guess it's I'm gonna call it by its real name, which is like masturbation circle. That's what I think, but a virtual one, right? What do you think of that? Or do you have a thought?
I do. It's safer than seeing someone in person right now. So that's on the plus side, right? What comes to my head now is security. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the reports in the news the last few days. Zoom is having some trouble. We're not 100% sure of the security with Zoom. Facebook, hell no, that's not secure. So I think people just need to be cognizant of where they're putting their information. And if you're putting your naked body online on a platform like Facebook or Zoom, just do it knowingly, right? I would not want anybody to be surprised that, oh my gosh, my identity was breached, my security was breached. And I think even if it was, that information isn't going to go anywhere. But I also want people to be educated about it. I did an article a while back on our sex toys being hacked. The smart sex toys, which I'm sure we'll talk about today too. Teledildonic.
Yes.
A few companies have been hacked. So that information is out there, but it's a tiny, tiny percentile, and most companies are addressing those problems. But again, for anyone putting themselves out there online, it's a thought to consider. And obviously anyone under 18, do not do it for a host of reasons.
Yeah. You're not ready. For the main reason being you're not ready for it, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I think in general, the masturbation circles, if my platform is all sex positivity, if it's pleasurable and consensual, it's good. So another way is saying that all sex is good sex as long as it's consensual and pleasurable.
Right.
If it checks those two boxes, I have no place to judge anyone about what they're doing.
No, I agree with you. 1,000% agree with you on that. But this is new territory, meaning, yes, when it comes to like one-on-one, naked gatherings, naked parties, masturbation. I mean, Betty Dodson, she was like the great grandmother of it all, and what an inspiration. And she taught us so much. I have her very ancient, it looks like copy of, Self-Love, whatever it was called. And it was revelatory, back then when I was, I was like 16 when I found that copy in Woodstock, where I think she was based. And, so that's definitely empowering, on every level, but I am, in thought, I'm in mid-thought. That's where I find myself, I find myself in mid-thought about all the viral, incarnations of this, the same sexual expressions, because of the limitations and also because of the long-term, perhaps the possible long-term influences, and the limitations being, there could be someone videotaping it against your consent, and there's no controlling that. and what will be done with that in the future is just unknown. There are a number of unforeseen consequences, and one of them is that people become so familiar with it that they find enough pleasure in it to not want to take the risk of being intimate, either because they're afraid of germs or because they don't want to commit. They have fear of commitment, which is already, a growing fear in our world and in our generation. And then, the younger generations who have been raised on the internet completely may inevitably take that even further. So, robot sex.
Right.
Speaking of the toys, it's a good time to bring in, the question about smart sex toys. And I'd like you to give us some examples of what's out there and what they do. And then, after that, we can perhaps discuss a little bit, virtual robot.
About the robots?
Yes.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate what you said, because I completely agree with you. The long-term challenges, we don't know those yet, but we know millennials are having less sex than any generation in recorded history.
True.
And millennials have been exposed to technology sooner than the rest of us have been.
Yeah, and then generation, I think, is X, Z. The ones that Z, the younger ones, even more so. Yeah.
Right. So I agree with what you said. It's either germs, it's fear of commitment, but I think what I'm seeing more, it's social anxiety, because they're not having practice doing what you and I are doing right now, which is eye contact. Like, that's the baseline, right? Like, that's like the entry point. But then to have eye contact plus real life touching, plus real life pleasure, plus real life intercourse, all of those things that sex entails, it's so out of their comfort zone that making that move, it just, like you said, it feels too risky. It feels like the possibility for rejection is incredibly high, only because they don't have the practice doing it. And what technology does is it takes the edge off. I like to say technology is just good enough. Like, it takes the edge off us really needing to connect, because we can get just enough virtually. If I watch porn, I can masturbate and have my orgasm, and that takes the edge off my libido. But it's not really good enough. For most people, it is not going to be good enough.
Right. And also, it kind of numbs their sensual faculties. I mean, as with everything, you need to practice something, right? So unless you've practiced all let's say 5 basic forms of touch, and on more than one person, so you have kind of like points of comparison. I mean, we can even speak about it in, semi-scientific terms for people who respect that stuff more. You need a control group. You really do. You get better by having been intimate, and by intimate, we're not talking about penetrative sex, but having been in intimate space with more and more people. The more people you're able to feel, physically, and speak with them about things that are of an intimate nature and be seen by them naked, the more, gifted, skilled, comfortable, all of it you become. So I feel that, because they're so comfortable online, in virtual space, this change, which is a huge change for them. I think that they are now home from like school or wherever thinking, the boomers just stole my future. I'm not going to make the money I thought I would be making when this is over. So they have all of that. And then, they kind of live vicariously so much.
Through social media.
Social media, yeah. I mean, they feel loved when their TikTok goes viral. They feel loved when their Twitter message gets, retweeted a lot. They feel loved in that way, virally, by strangers, which for me, I don't feel it because I think I'm already, I've known other love so much longer before, before this was invented, that I kind of very clearly, remember the difference and prefer like the fire of the human exchange and the risk. Prefer the risk. Prefer to get burned. The kind of like Holocaust, which involves, the burning of the self and coming out of your ashes as a phoenix, which happens in, really deep human one-on-one, love connection. So I prefer that. But if you haven't experienced it enough and you haven't felt the high of it, then it's like you're a little self-medicated by the online world. I feel like it's kind of, it's like a tiny dose of alcohol or something. It just keeps you a little numb.
Yeah. And I feel so much for my clients that come to me. I work with adult virgins a lot, both male and female. So these are people in their upper 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s who have never had sex. Most of them mean by sex, they mostly mean penetrative sex, but they've had very little sensual or intimate experiences with other people. And because our world is so full of sex and social media is so full of sex, they come with this perception that everyone's really good at it, right? Like everyone else is born.
Everyone else except them. Yes.
Except them. And I'm like, I have never spoken to one person in my whole life who had a fantastic first sexual experience. I mean, I've talked to people who were like, it was lovely, it was perfect, but no one was like, I was so good at sex that time. Right?
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, some people, I feel that some people are just better, are born with a facility. It's a small number, but they are, it's like you're born where you can play basketball better than the vast majority. And you're born where you can you're a fast reader or you're a math genius or whatever. So yeah, there are some people who I feel have an incredible kind of like bottomless capacity. And I wish that I wish that they would work as sex surrogates. I really do. I wish that our society would pay appropriately for those gifts, the same that they pay like the athletes, because those are the people who can kind of like charge and change on one all these people who are your clients, who are just not that, for whatever, for many reasons. I think that some of them are particularly smart, so they have kind of like ignored their physicalness. Some of them may have been raised by parents who were not intimate or physical. There are all kinds of reasons and stuff that happens, but they would profit from 12 visits with a sex surrogate.
Oh my gosh, yeah, or a sexological body worker.
Right, exactly.
To jump on the phone because I spent, the beginning part of my career in California, and I feel like I had a good handful of those resources, but I feel like I need them again, specifically in New York and on the East Coast, a range of surrogates and sexological body workers that I can send my clients to. Because,
exactly.
A man in his 20s might not want to see a woman in her 50s, or a man in his 50s might not want to see a woman in her 20s.
Exactly.
We need a wide range.
Yeah. And insurance should pay for it, period. Yes. Yeah. Because it's like legitimate, need. And I don't understand why, in a country that's so much about like procreation and anti-abortion, the support of like procreation in all these other ways is not available. But anyway, so yes, so there is that, the adult, the older virgin, and here they are now. I'm sure that they find this actually kind of prophetic, right? Like everybody's in my place right now. Welcome to my world.
Absolutely.
So what is let's go back to the sex toys. What are your recommendations and your, warnings, and also, if you have specific products, when it comes to sex toys, for self-love, for people to kind of take the opportunity to discover their bodies and discover other ways of orgasming by themselves. other erotic zones in their bodies, right? Take time and give them their own bodies the attention that they would have given to their lover.
Right. And now is an ideal time for that. It's been interesting because I've been talking about immersive sex toys and immersive sex therapy for, 4.5 or 5 years now.
Wow.
And it hasn't really gained the traction that I was thinking it would. If people go on my website, there's a link to my Next Sex website, which is all about immersive sexuality. So that link will be there. The first thing let's talk about is this fancy word called teledildonics, which it's basically just a smart sex toy. So it's a Bluetooth-enabled sex toy. So you can be using it in your home in Miami. I can be using it at my home outside of New York, and we can connect our toys and have a session together. So I could control the speed and vibrations of your toys. You could do the same with my toy. So it's just a way of helping people feel more connected with miles and miles between them. And it's also just like novel and fun. You can be in the same room together and still control each other's pleasure. It's just, I feel like novelty is the seed of human desire. So it's another dose of that.
Yeah, and it holds on to the element of surprise, because when you are with yourself, you kind of like do what feels good, and, but you're liking that unexpected, where a lover will have a different idea, and so you will be surprised by what happens. Yeah, so I think that's nice. Do you have to also be on the phone, or is it just...
It can just be through Bluetooth.
Okay.
There are some. Now, the next kind of level up is virtual reality. So there are some smart sex toys that can be connected to a virtual reality film. And that can either be with your partner or it can be a video. So a porn video.
Right.
Your toy will sync to the action on the video.
Very interesting.
As people having sex, their movements get faster, your masturbatory sleeve or your vibrator will move more quickly.
Right.
For what's out there right now, the biggest players in this space have penile, so they're masturbatory sleeves, Yeah, so it's a sleeve that fits over your penis, and that will vacillate at different patterns, different speeds. And then most of the vibrators, some can be inserted inside, but a lot of them are for clitoral.
Yeah. It feels that a lot of people, women are going for these like stronger and stronger clitoral stimulators. And what is your opinion on that?
I never tell people to start with the wand, 100%. I don't think a magic wand,
Yes, I know, yes.
I don't think that's a good place to start. I do not want to feed into the ideology that once you learn how to masturbate with a sex toy, you'll never be able to come with your partner again. I 100% don't believe that. But I do believe if you go too strong, too fast, and critically, if that's the only thing you ever do, of course you're going to train your body to have an orgasm only one way, right? Only with that toy, only lying on my back, only at that speed. And there should be nothing in sex that's an only. It should be a smorgasbord, whole menu of options.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I've actually had, listeners who've reached out and said, I want to try something else, but it just doesn't work. I can't get the position right. I don't, I feel like I've trained myself out of the possibility of penetration, because it's so easy for me to achieve orgasm clitorally, and it's so strong that like it would take a man or a woman, whatever.
With a bionic
superpower,
tongue.
Yeah. The bionic tongue, yeah. So you get to a place where you don't have patience anymore for the human, and you're with your lover, and you're like, would you take the wand and just like, play with me? I know.
Yeah. A great sex doesn't have to include orgasm. I think that's what we forget so often. Really good sex doesn't have to be orgasm specific. And you're not going to train yourself out of it. You will need to take a break from your favorite toy and your favorite position. That's 100% true.
Yeah.
You want to learn how to have an orgasm a different way. You've got to take a break from what you're doing.
Yeah, everybody does. Yeah. And I feel that, that's a problem for people alone, especially now, like having the same thing over and over just to find release in orgasm, relax a little, and also for couples, who like kind of shorten the time of the sex, and they, again, tend to become increasingly goal-oriented. So let's, get off and get to the next thing, whatever it is, and especially if you have unexpected crowd in your home right now in quarantine, so you have like family members, children, parents, it makes it even more difficult to like, be in open, sex space because you don't have like so much private time. So it's leading us to, do what we know. And yeah, I think that it's important to kind of keep that in mind and be conscious and try to experiment and also like not let go, like just not let go of your sexual faculties, make time, find the spot, go in the closet, lock the bathroom, get in the shower and just, feel yourself because it's so healing, just like caressing yourself alone is so healing, feeling your own hands on your body is a form of feeling loved. So, yeah, it's important for people to experience it, to give it to themselves, even if it feels kind of creepy or,
I think,
that's the social conditioning.
Right.
So it's not you, it's not creepy, it's because you feel watched, but you're not watched, you're not on the screen. Like no one is taping you, no one knows, no one sees. It's not creepy, it's you, feeling your own body and saying hi to the parts that make you up. So, it's part of our task is to kind of disconnect from this feeling of being always seen.
I couldn't agree more. So yeah, like you said, find any quiet, private space that you can. And I think now if there's any time for a case for quickies, it's now. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. So, get in the car if you have to, like you were a teenager.
And just, do what you need to do. I encourage 100% a sensual session at some point, but now might not be the time. So take care of yourself. If it takes 30 seconds or 3 minutes or 5 minutes, like
exactly in the shower. Yeah. I agree. I mean, me too. I encourage like slow, conscious, involved sex that starts with conversation, but whatever. Now,
get good. Take care of yourself.
So my most common question, so like this is kind of like my finale as far as my questions go to you, is how to for phone sex and FaceTime sex. If you have, a lot of my listeners again have never had it. They just have never had reason to have it, and they don't know how to go about it. And especially if it's a woman and the man doesn't suggest it, she doesn't even know how to initiate it. And then if the man does suggest it, but it's someone she doesn't know, who, she met on like Bumble or Match, she doesn't know whether to just like take a chance and say, oh yeah, why, now is the time. Let's, you only live once. Or whether she should be acting the same way she would if if they could meet for real, which is like go on a date, go to dinner, speak longer, blah, blah. So people are very confused by the about the details, by the how to go about it, how to go about it both on the phone alone and also on FaceTime, or video chat.
Okay. Yeah, those are all great questions. I feel like the first step is for everyone to identify what their intention is and what their expectations are. So my intention for myself is to feel connected. Is it to have an orgasm? Is it to feel sexy? Is it to create the foundation of a new relationship? Or is it just to have an experience with this person, one and done, and then go off on my way? My expectation is that I will feel good about this, obviously not feel bad about this, not feel creepy about it, not feel used, any of those things. So for ourselves, identifying intention and expectation, And then a way that I love to approach these conversations is just to have them ask, hey, I'm curious what you would think about trying phone sex. I'm curious what you would think about if we tried to connect and hook up on FaceTime. Because using those words, I'm curious, it really keeps the other person out of defensiveness. You're honestly just coming at this from a place of curiosity. What do you think? You're not saying, I want to have phone sex with you. I'm putting it out there. What do you think? Right? So for that woman that wants to try it, but she's afraid to ask, I think that's a great way to go.
Yeah. And then let's say, they want to try it. I mean, everybody wants to try it. They just don't know how exactly what it is that they're trying.
Right.
So, people mostly assume that they have to like go into character and speak dirty in a way that maybe they wouldn't, have in person. I think, people feel that that if they're on the phone, they can kind of like, replicate some sort of like porn dialogue maybe. Right. Is there something, is there a guidance? I say just, patiently describe what you're doing and what, if there is consent, you would like, the other person to do to themselves. Just like be purely descriptive. I think, for me, that's like a safe and not that easy way of going about it. Just avoid avoid the dirty talk that's not really who you are, because I feel like it distances you from yourself in a sense.
Yeah, and if you're distant from yourself, you're distant from your pleasure. And that's what this is supposed to be about, pleasure and connection. So I 100% agree with you. If dirty talking and role-playing is a thing for you in real life before COVID-19, 100% go for it. But if it's never been a thing for you, I think the idea of introducing it virtually is the wrong way to go. Like, that's something you're going to want to introduce in real life. So be yourself. You can ask the other person, are you good taking your shirt off now? I'm going to take my shirt off now. Like you said, those descriptive characteristics, how you feel when you touch yourself and explaining that to them. We mirror, right? We're mirrors for each other. So if I'm saying something to you, you're going to usually mirror the same thing back to me. Unless we are so disconnected that no one's getting the messages, which hang up, right? Like if you're feeling so disconnected. Yeah,
if you're saying, I'm touching like whatever, my left, this, and the other person is already like far ahead in, sitting on your face or like coming on your face mode, then there is definitely disparity. Yeah.
Right. I think in general, technology is just a bridge. It should never be a replacement for our sexuality at all. It's just this bridge that we've been given in some ways is incredibly helpful, in some ways can be harmful if we get stuck there. But anything you would do in real life, I think, is definitely a go virtually. If you don't have experience asking and doing this, treat it like the first time you're in bed with someone.
That's a good suggestion. Yeah. Go about it the same way that the first time that you tried any type of sex exchange that you hadn't had before. Yeah.
And be honest too. If you're nervous about it, be honest. Not a lot of us have had experience with phone sex, so just be honest about it. I think that's more endearing than anything else.
Yeah. One of my rules, and I found this out in practice, and it's a hard rule. I do not, there is no break in it. It's not a soft limit. It's a hard limit for me. Is that it has to be reciprocal. The same way that I have a hard rule that, for a girl to go down on a boy, the boy has to go down on a girl. Done. No way. There is no other way. Because, because there is a history of thousands of years behind us. That's why, otherwise it would be fine. But it can't be. We have to make sure every time that it's reciprocated. I feel the same way about, video sex and FaceTime sex. That if you, especially if you're a woman, but it's, both ways, because there is the feminine is usually the aspect that feels watched, right? So if one of the partners has the camera and is pointing to their body, and the other one of the partners is the one watching and masturbating, that doesn't feel good. It just doesn't. So, if you're going to show your nakedness, and if you're going to show your private parts, the other party has to do the same. I feel that that's, how it will feel safe afterwards. And of course talk about it, make kind of, some sort of reconnaissance, because asking the question directly doesn't really necessarily get you a truth or lie. But there is a way to know, who intends what and who is ethical and, and who is desperate.
Right. Yeah, if it doesn't feel good, it's not good. Hang up the phone.
Right, yeah.
Trust your gut 100%, and reciprocity has to be there, open communication. If you do decide you're going to go into a role-playing mode, which is fine, at least talk about what your script is before you go in. So say, hey, I was thinking I would pretend I'm this person, you could pretend you're that, let's see how that goes, right?
Yeah.
You're less experienced. I don't think role-playing is the way to make your entree into virtual sex.
Right. Yeah. The same with like power exchange. If you've done power exchange in real life, then it's totally, fine. And actually, it makes virtual sex easier, because you can get turned on just by being told to like do all kinds of other things that are not sexual if you're, the dominated one, and if you're the dominant, likewise, So, but if you haven't done it and you're just starting, again, I feel that there is too much danger in that, to get things, to get confused.
Yep, and have consent feel squishy, and none of us like consent squishy.
And then finally, there is, we've read that there is a huge, again, they say, a huge surge in paid phone sex and paid video sex. So a lot of women apparently are using this to monetize, their bodies. And I don't know if you have an opinion on it or some suggestion.
I do. I mean, my opinion is if it's coming from an empowered place for that woman, 100% do what you feel empowered to do. I work with a lot of women who have been escorts in the past.
Survivors,
and survivors as well. Those two usually go together. You've just got to be so clear about what you're doing. And when I mean clear in your consciousness and awareness, and also don't be intoxicated or using drugs in any way when you're making these decisions. Again, I'm like totally pro sex work, but I'm pro sex work with awareness again about your intention and your expectation.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pro sex work for sure in the sense of it should be legal. They should have health care. They should have health insurance. They should get retirement benefits and all of that. Yes. It is, however, depressing to me. It is heartbreaking to me that, women so often have to use their body as an object that they trade, or show, to get paid, and get paid not that much. So
I couldn't agree more.
In terms of survival, yes, like when there is no other way to put food on the table, you have to do what you have to do, and then it's noble at that stage. But I feel that if, for young women especially, who feel empowered, at the present moment, because they get a lot of compliments and because they find their bodies, are beautiful, because, we're all at our best looking when we're in our 20s, right? But we're also at our least self-aware when we're our 20s, because we haven't had enough of self yet to figure it all out. We change, we become many different selves. And if you remove like the child, which is like the dependent self, in your 20s, you haven't had a self, like enough versions of you around to kind of put them all together or next to each other and say, okay, out of all this stuff I've done, like, who am I? Who have I been consistently? What has pleased me and, annoyed me consistently? Whatever, all this, right? Philosophical inner check-in. So you feel beautiful. You're happy that you're beautiful. You think it's easy money. And then you have the scars afterward, because the scars are psychic, they're invisible. But the scar is that you have been reduced to a sum of your physical parts alone. You have been paid for, the flesh, the meat and bones that you are, as if the rest wasn't there. And that will hurt at some point, because the most valuable part of you has been ignored. And so, I feel that even though it seems like easy money and it could seem empowering, it's important to see it in the context of the entirety of our social structure. Our mothers, grandmothers, depending on like where someone was raised, either our mothers or our great-grandmothers or our grandmothers, one of those generations were breeders, nothing else. And all of their foremothers were also breeders, nothing else, right? And so we have come to this place because of thousands and hundreds of thousands of women who have fought hard for the change. So to reduce ourselves back to this body that is desired specifically because is a breathing space, and it doesn't, even if it's not about the conception, it's about the, insemination, there is the desire is that, that you will be inseminated. It's the same archetypal urge, to get owned, to get, somebody plants their flag on you and marks you as their territory. So whether or not you're aware of it in that moment, that is what you're giving away. You're not taking power, you're giving away your freedom of choice, or, your sense of who you are in the world in a grander, more holistic, way, like your soul, your heart, your thoughts, your memories, all that stuff that make you. So yeah, I'm hoping that it won't keep, growing. I've met sugar babies. I did a show on sugar babies, and I didn't, use it because I was of two minds about it. So yeah, I'm just hoping that this generation will find a way to demonetize sex.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do too, because I would never going to tell someone what to do or not to do sexually, but there's repercussions, and we don't really get that piece until we're old enough to get it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. This has been wonderful. Thanks again, and thank you out there for listening to us. And until next week, speak sex. If I could make love incessantly, I would be God.